if everyone is here, I could see you participating and we get some good interaction. But because I can't see everyone at home on Zoom, you get in what you get out, right? Or you get out what you put in type thing. So if we do an exercise and I ask you to write something down and give you guys 5 minutes for an exercise, I really want you to participate at home. So please do so, and I promise you, you'll get more out of this. Before we get started, my name's Chris Gray. I'll tell you more about me. I got a slide on myself. I'll be happy to dive into that. But before I get started, I wanted to share a story. It's the tale of two interns. One is from LMU, one is from USC. And the LMU intern comes in and says, Chris, I want to learn X, Y, Z. And when I finish that, I want to learn this. And then when I finish that, I want to learn that. And really kind of took the bull by the horns to make the most out of the internship, because this person was there for education and to learn. And then on the flip side, the intern from USC, his question was, Chris, do you mind if I intern remotely? True story. And the tale of two interns, right? The experience, not only for me and the company in dealing with these two interns, but the one that was there every day, the one that was, okay, I got this down, I'm done with this, what's next? I want to do this, I want to do that. Had a great experience. And for those that don't know who I'm talking about, that intern from LMU is Mr. Chris Rudolph, that's here in front of me today. So I'm sure you're clapping at home, but it was a pleasure having Chris at Moss & Company this past year for through the summer months, right, Chris, for about three or so months. So hats off to LMU. I mean, I think Chris is pretty unique, but if LMU students are half of what Chris is, I mean, this institution's doing a great job. And no offense to USC, that was just one person. But with that said, from an intern standpoint, if you're looking for something like that in real estate, you want to learn, shoot at the end of this presentation, I think you guys will get a copy of these slides. All my contact info is there. So my email, my cell phone is there. Please reach out. Chris knows how that works. Last year when I taught this class, he came up after and said, I want an internship. And I go, done deal. We exchanged emails, and next thing you know, he was an intern at Moss & Company. And he did great work for us, and I think he learned a lot at the same time. So we appreciate that. So keep that in mind. Anyone that's interested in learning, and yes, they are paid internships. And if you have any questions on the experience, you could ask Chris directly. But I think it's, I am biased, but I think it is a good experience. So whoever is interested in that, make sure you communicate. Couple of things. First, as we dive in, I think it's important that we define, what asset management is. And as you can see here, right out of the definition, or right out of the dictionary, is a financial service provider, right? Asset manager manages the asset of his or her clients. The task includes not only providing advice, but also making investment decisions based on clients' investment strategy, risk tolerance, and financial situation. I put this up here as definition because I think, as the class is labeled asset management and property management, it's important to know the difference of the two. Whereas property management, as you see underneath there, is the operation, control, maintenance, and oversight of real estate and the physical property. And this could include residential, commercial, office, retail, industrial, etc. So in other words, the main difference, asset managers are managing numbers. Property managers are actually executing the plan, right? So oftentimes in our business, Moss & Company is a property management firm. Many of our clients, institutional clients, UBS, BlackRock, et cetera, some of these publicly traded companies will have asset managers that the property managers, us, will report to, right? And so that's important to know, because if you're, right, so much of this is for you guys today. It's about, hey, I've got some interest in real estate, but what do I want to do in real estate? So if you're more of a numbers person, right, you would probably want to steer towards the asset management side of real estate. If you're more of a people person, then the property management side would probably be more suited for you or better suited for you. If you're both, then that's great, because an asset manager, the best asset managers are great with people, and the best property management or property managers are great with numbers as well. But I think the key here is asset managers, and it might be hint, right, for your end of class questions. Asset managers really managing numbers, property managers mainly managing people and executing the plan or the strategy in the operation of the property. Now, it's all about execution, right? You're going to hear me say a bunch of times today that everyone has heard that knowledge is power, right? Put it in the chat box if you heard knowledge is power. I'm going to keep asking you guys to chat at home to make sure you're paying attention. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Okay? Execution is power. If there's nothing else that you take from this session, this certificate program, that's what I want you to take away, is execution is power. In other words, we could know everything, but if we don't execute, we're not going to achieve our goals. And that's what we're really going to be talking about today, because asset management and property management, sure, I could educate you on that. It doesn't take 3 hours. And some of you will be excited about it. Hi guys, come on in. And some of you won't be excited about it. But I promise you, no matter your interest in real estate, property management, or asset management, this class, you're going to take a lot from today, because I'm going to give you the secret to it. And I know that sounds like a bunch of BS, but that's why I'm saying, if you're at home on Zoom, I want you to pay attention, because we're going to be talking about tools, not only to make you successful in real estate as a property manager or an asset manager, but it's going to make you, I'm going to give you tools that will make you successful in all aspects of life. From finances to relationships to health, etc. That's, in my opinion, where the money is, right? And I don't mean literally money. I mean, from learning today, I wish someone, when I went to LMU, I wish someone gave me these skills back then, because it's absolutely life-changing. So hopefully I got your attention, because we will be going over that very soon. I won't save it till the end. So a little bit about me. I mentioned my name's Chris Gray. I'm the president of Moss & Company. Moss & Company is a regional property management firm. We have 400 employees, 14,000 units, apartment units under management in greater Los Angeles, and about 2 million feet of commercial, so office, industrial, and retail under management. So it's a pretty big operation, but I want to give you a little bit about my story so you know who you're hearing from today. I was once in your shoes. I graduated from LMU a long time ago. I was born and raised in LA, and I was graduated from LMU in 2001. Right from LMU, I know they still have the job fairs. I was walking around the building over on LMU Drive, which was brand new to the university back then. And they had all the tables set up. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what I want to do. And one of the things that showed was E&J Gallo Winery. And I go, well, I like to drink wine. That was something I knew I liked doing. So I said, I'll go talk to these people. Bottom line, right after school, I went and worked for the E&J Gallo Winery. And I was just doing sales with them, and I finished with them when I left in 5 years as state manager in Nevada. I was part of their management development program. And I think learning what they taught really set me up for success. And hopefully this certificate program and your interaction with people like myself, and of course the rest of the instructors on the certificate program from the REACT board, it will hopefully, pave the road for you guys and set you guys up for success as well. After the winery, I went to a company called Luminous Laser, sold medical devices for 5 years, and that's when I started with Moss & Company. So with Moss, I started in business development, and then I became kind of the head of operations, and then a VP, and then the president. And the only reason I held all those positions and that quickly was because of my training at the winery of managing people. If you can manage people, it's one of the hardest things to do. You could run any company. You could start your own and be successful, or you could go into an organization, create value, and end up running the organization. So being a team player and people skills are certainly key. So one of the things I also want you to understand in today, not only about real estate, but a takeaway, right? One of the things, what is success, right? Whatever it is that you guys want, we're going to go into some goal setting as well, which I'm excited for you guys about today. But it's really work ethic. It all comes down to work ethic, depending on what you want. Whatever it is you want, no matter what you do, if you are known for your work ethic, you're going to be successful. And I want to give you a quick story because I think it illustrates the point. When I graduated from LMU, I was renting a room out of a house out here with some buddies. It was, a couple weeks after graduation. So it's summertime after graduation. So all my friends are still kind of in college party mode, and I'm starting a new job. So when I first started with the winery, I'm thinking, okay, put on a tie, show me back then, put on a tie, show me the money type thing. And they give me a feather duster, right? Okay, you're going to go sell to grocery stores and you're going to dust bottles. I go, okay, well, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the best at it. So in that business, the people I was selling to in stores are grocery store liquor managers. If anyone knows how a grocery store operates, those liquor managers are there during the night, wee hours of the morning, right? So some of them start at midnight, as an example, and they're off at 7 a.m. So I knew if I wanted to do well, back to work ethic, and not be in this position long, but be promoted quickly, I had to go meet all these people and be their best friend and really increase sales of whatever products I was representing. So I would leave my house here in Westchester that I was renting with friends at 2 a.m. to go hit my first, so I could hit 5 accounts before 6 a.m. So no joke, I'm on, I think it's 82nd Street, back when that was more of an entrance. I think it's 82nd, right off pulling in 80th. Anyway, it's 83rd, okay. Anyway, so I'm driving down 83rd, and at 2 a.m. I'm going to work. I got my tie on, I got my feather duster in hand, and one of my friends' houses is still like rocking. It's like party time, and I'm at a 4-way stop. I'll never forget sitting in this Chevy S10 truck. It was a company car. I thought it was pretty cool. And I'm thinking I could pull into my friend's house and continue the party, or I could go to work. And I was the one that just went to work, right? It was hard at the time, but it's those decisions that we're all faced with, right? When it comes to work ethic, that will get us ahead of them, right? So all my friends, I'm not going to say who by name, but those guys that were partying that night, they're not as far, financially, as in comparison today. It doesn't mean anything, right? But it's because of the decisions we make. And it's not for everyone, right? Some people, there's no way they'd wake up at 2 a.m, and that's fine. But my point of the story is work ethic. No matter what you do, be the best at it, and you'll find more success than you could ever dream of. I know everyone is in real estate, or maybe show of hands, everyone interested in real estate. Obviously, that's why you're doing the certificate program. And you can type it in the chat too if you'd like at home. Everyone interested in owning real estate? That's probably the big thing. And why do we want to own real estate? You guys could type it in at home in the chat box. Why do you want to own real estate? And anyone here, just blurt it out.
Tax advantage.
Tax advantage, great. Passive income, that's usually number one, right?
Financial independence.
Financial independence, freedom.
Taking advantage of what's going on right now in the market.
All right, taking advantage of some investment, sure. So I think anything in the chat that's different, Chris?
Passive income.
Oh, it's up here.
Yeah, right there for you. Yeah.
Oh, financial freedom, passive income, great. Juliet, great. Peyton, nice. Thank you guys. Kevin, thank you guys all for contributing here. And I love execution as power already. So there's no doubt about it. Those are probably the key reasons to get into real estate. Now, maybe some of you already own real estate and you're already on building your portfolio, which is fantastic. But if you're like me, back when I was at LMU, I knew I was interested in real estate, all for the same reasons you just said, mainly from investment, financial freedom, everything you guys just mentioned. but I had no idea how I was gonna buy my first house, right? There's a little thing called money, right? A little thing called down payment. And that's where the execution comes, right? And I'll tell you a quick story on my first deal from an execution standpoint. So I'm working at Moss, I'm playing a charity golf event with a broker that I'm paired up with in this thing. And this guy was an older guy and he really wanted to be kind of like a mentor to me. He said, Chris, when are you gonna buy your own building? And we had a relationship prior to this golf match. And I said, someday, someday, someday. And finally he said, someday is today. So we're playing golf and it was at Moore Park Country Club north of here. And on the 15th tee box, I remember it vividly. He says, we're going to play in this tournament this time next year. If you don't own a building by this time next year, when we're standing on this tee box, you have to pay me $500. And but you know, conversely, if next year when we're sitting on this tee box and you do own something, I'll give you $500. And I'm thinking, all right, you're on, right? So shit, later that year, if I don't get into my first building, 8 units in Hollywood, close to Paramount Studios. And his name is Steve Geiger. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I hope he's still good because he was older back then. But so that next year, standing on the tee box, Geiger pulled out his wallet and gave me $500. Now, I think the better part of the story is Geiger was my broker when I bought the damn thing. So he made a lot more money. So it was actually a well-spent $500 on his end. But the point is, we all need a push to get started. Find your push. Find your Steve Geiger in your life to push you to get in that first deal. Because it is scary as all shit, right? It is scary, but don't hold yourself back. And that's going to be another piece of advice, is get started early and time is on your side. And there are ways that you hear, probably through syndications and a lot of other classes in the certificate program. There's other ways to raise money so you don't have to come up with a down payment on your own. And oh, and by the way, that first deal, I had some money on my own, but I didn't have enough. So what do? I go to my folks. I'm thinking, well, my folks will invest with me, right? I mean, I'm their kid, their youngest of 2 kids, especially. And I tell my dad, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the building. This is what I want to do. And my dad goes, nope, don't want to. So my folks were out. So it was my mother-in-law actually that said, you know what, I believe in it. I believe in you. We're doing it. And long story short, it was very successful. And she ended up doubling her money in a short period of time. And I went back to my folks. That was a nice conversation where I said, hey, Dad, remember that deal you didn't want to do? Well, I just made my mother-in-law, you know, X amount of money and it could have been yours. So the moral of the story is find your Steve Geiger, get a push, get into your first deal. It's scary, but find a way. Any questions so far? I mean, we're about to get into some good stuff. And then I'm going to bore you with some property management stuff. But this is all life stuff that we're about to do. So, you know, we're going to talk a lot about today, you know, we talked about why you want to be in real estate. You know, when you talk about financial freedom, you talk about passive income, etc. That's all great. The key though, as you guys know, is having goals, having outcomes, right? What is it that you want? Where are you today? Right? And it's all about closing that gap. So many people in life, and I see it all the time, I see it every day. And I was one of these people before I actually got out of my subconscious and started learning it and seeing it. So many people in life just go through life not knowing where they're going. It's absolutely amazing. And we're all guilty of it. I was guilty of it probably until I was 35. Can you imagine? That's why I said, I wish somebody, when I was here at LMU, somebody stood up here and shared what I'm about to share with you today in these next couple of hours, because I want you to write it down, and it's not going to make 100% sense today. But if you write it down and keep it in front of you and do some of the things and utilize the tools that we talked about today, by the time when you're 35, you will be 10 times further than I was in 35, 100 times further. Because it wasn't until I learned these tools and I started putting it in play at the age of 35, and now I'm 43, so that was about 8 years, life changing on all aspects, all categories of life. So when we're talking about goals and outcomes, that's everything in life. You got to measure it. You got to know where you are today, where you want to be, and come up with a plan. I'll show you a success story in a second, or the success formula. That's going to be key. But before we move on, I kind of want to set some goals for this class, right? So I'm going to need you in the chat too. So be ready at home. Why are you here today, right? What do you hope to achieve? What's your goal in the next 2 hours with this certificate class called Asset Management and Property Management? What do you want to get out? I'll give you 1 minute to type it in the chat, and then we'll throw out a couple of here, a couple ideas here. It could be anything. It could be catch up on my social media. I hope not. But hey, at least it's a goal, right? That you could work towards. In other words, I don't want you just sitting and just going through the motions. I want you to, I want to know what you want to get out of it. So I know to ensure to meet those goals, right? So you guys are giving me your time. And time is the single most precious thing in the world, right? You don't get it back. So I really appreciate you guys, being here and giving me your time. So I want to make sure I make the best use of your time. So what do you want to get out of this class other than the secret to life, getting whatever you want? Anyone here? Do you guys want to throw something out?
I want to see what else I can take away, given like the new perspective I have from a lot of the stuff I've learned recently since last time I listened to your presentation.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yes.
I kind of want to figure out like where do I want to go after graduation, like what type of real estate I really want to get into, like in terms of like finding a job and everything.
Good.
And then I also want to figure out kind of the frameworks to kind of investing personally.
Nice. Those are great. And there's going to be more on chat. Brought my understanding. Good. Tax brackets. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. There's no doubt, in the services business, you become an advisor. So whether you're in taxes, what have you, the more you know about life in general, and then also real estate and how that could help your clients, that's fantastic. So whatever your goals are, I want this to be interactive. There's nothing worse to listen to someone speak for whatever period of time, and there's nothing that you care to hear. So we could move this, right? It's any NFL fans, right? I'm a big NFL fan. We could call audible. We'll call an audible at the line if we need to. I want to make sure if you guys have specific questions, make sure at home, put it in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to them, and we'll talk about those topics to ensure you're getting the most out of your time here today. So keep that in mind. It's a two-way street. So this is pretty cool. Why am I here today? So I learned a little bit about why you're here. And this is more philosophical, I think. But I have 3 guys here that I study, read their books, etc. One is Tony Robbins, as you can see, and he talks about 6 human needs. These human needs are great to understand because it drives all human behavior. This is the psychology behind business. So if you're in sales, you could utilize these 6 needs of figuring out to get your customer to say yes to whatever you're selling. This is good to know in relationships. I mean, in every aspect of life, we're all human beings. And everything we do are based on these 6 needs. First one is certainty. Certainty is the assurance you can avoid pain and gain pleasure, right? We all need certainty. We also need, right? God screwed with us a little bit, said, hey, humans, you're going to need certainty and you're going to need uncertainty. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? Or variety. The need for the unknown, the change. Why do you think sports are so popular? Because we know the outcome before the game? Hell no, we don't know. That's the variety. So sports is a huge business because it brings uncertainty or variety to our lives. Significance, the feeling of being unique, important, special, or needed. By the way, we all have these needs. The difference is how much weight do we put on each one when we're making decisions. So significance could be, driving the best car, right? Having the expensive sports car, having the expensive watch, What are some other ways people gain significance? Tattoos, right? Another way. There's all kinds of ways people get and can gain significance. Another need is connection and love. That's normal through our relationships. And then the two last ones, growth and contribution, giving back. Now I list these things and define why am I here today. Because when I was younger, I wanted two of my driving human needs. When I say younger, college, 20s, was variety, uncertainty or variety, and significance. Very shallow like me. But it's normal, right? It's normal. You get a lot more meaning in life if those are not the two. I don't recommend those two, but that was me. I wanted variety and I wanted to be significant, right? I wanted to be the hero, so to speak. But as you go through life, as I have, 20 plus years after graduating from college, my human needs changed. And in fact, I'm wearing a necklace to remind me. That's what this is, folks. My two are growth and contribution. Growth because it leads to fulfillment, right? Growing means learning, progressing in life. If you're progressing and you're growing, life is damn good, right? It brings happiness. Contribution, giving back. That's why I'm here today. One of the ways I give back is giving back to charity. But I think my point is you get later in life, it's no longer about yourself. It's about your family. It's about my kids. And it's about giving back to individuals like I went through LMU, like I'm here today, because I want to be a guide and I want to see others succeed. And so that in a nutshell kind of gives you a little definition of 6 human needs, which is important, but also why am I here? Another guy I followed, Don Miller, big marketing guy. Anyone interested in marketing should look up Don Miller. And by the way, on these slides, you'll see some book titles that I have, some of my favorite books I recommend if you want to jot them down and take a look at them. I think they'll be well worth your while. So Don Miller talks about being a marketing guy, that our story or our life is our story, right? And we're the author. Pretty damn powerful. I mean, you can do whatever you want in life. You're the writer. So what character are you going to play? And he goes in through, are you going to be a victim? Are you going to be a villain? Are you going to be the hero? Or are you going to be the guy? Right? And you could be different things at different times, but you have to know what your story is, because that's going to give the meaning in your life. So, again, back to me, back when I was younger, I wanted to be the hero, but now I want to be the guy. Finally, Ray Dalio. 3 stages of life. Stage 1, you depend on others and learn. Stage 2, others depend on you and you work. That's me with three young boys. Stage 3, no one depends on you and you don't have to work, but you want to see people you care about succeed. So I'm working and people depend on me. So I guess I'm in stage 2, but I'm also moving into stage 3 where I want to give back. I want to see people succeed. And I share this with you, not because I'm unique. I share this with you because there's a lot of successful people out there that want to help. And it takes courage for someone in college or someone young in their 20s or their teens, whatever it is, to go up to someone successful and say, hey, I want to learn from you. But if you overcome that fear and you learn that skill, you are going to speed up your success curve, if you will, tenfold. And so these are the reasons I'm here, is because I want to help others. I want to help you guys. I want to help everyone on Zoom launch their careers and be a guide for them as they go through, as hopefully we have as a company for Chris. So it's a big thank you for allowing me to be here, for you guys being here, allowing me to teach you over the next couple of hours this topic of property management and asset management. As I mentioned earlier, time is the most precious thing. You can't get it back. And you guys are here with your time, and I want to make the most of it. So a big thank you, and I hope you do get a lot out of the next 2 hours. So we talked about having an outcome, knowing where we're going in life, having clarity, right? By show of hands in the room and on chat, the question is, who writes their goals down? I never did. I never did before 8 years ago. So if not, no problem. But raise your hand high if you write your goals down. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3. So half of the room. You guys write your goals down at home? Let's see it in chat. This is so important. There was a study done, I believe, is at Stanford, and of a graduating class years ago. I mean 30 years ago plus. They asked of the graduating class who writes their goals down. It was something like 5%. 5% of the students of the graduating class actually said they wrote their goals down. 20 or 30 years later, I'm paraphrasing this study pretty badly here, but 20 or 30 years later, they surveyed the same group on net worth. Study showed the 5% that wrote their goals down had a combined higher net worth than the rest of their class. There is something magical about writing what you want down. Now you're probably thinking one of two things. Okay, cool, interesting. And I'm not going to do it, right? We talked about execution at the beginning of this thing. Write them down. The other thing is, okay, cool story, but I'm not going to write them down. Some of you will write them down, but I'm telling you, again, if you don't take anything else from this class, write your goals down. Make it, at least twice a year. I think twice a year is great. Make it a commitment to yourself. Put it on your calendar. Schedule the time. Go somewhere. Sit on the beach, what have you, and write down your goals. And we're going to take a moment here as an activity, and I want you guys to write your goals. And I'm going to give you quite a bit of time to do so. And I will help you in guiding you to write down your goals. So if you have a phone, type it in your phone. If you have paper, pen, whatever, computer, laptop, open up a file, date it today, and write down and say, goals 2023 goals, what we're talking about, right? Now, when you talk about goals, so many people think money, finances, success. That's not everything. That's a byproduct, right? Money is a byproduct of success and hard work. So as a guide here, I threw some different categories of life up on the screen. So you could have finance goals. You could have work, career, your mission. You could have those goals. You could have goals related to your health. You could have goals related to relationships. You could have goals related to growth, contribution, giving back. So I'm going to give you a good amount of time here. So on the screen, on the paper, I want you to do a data dump. Do not think about the perfect goal. Do not think about what you're typing down. Just whatever comes to your mind, get it on paper or get it on that computer. Okay? So what do you want in life? If finances was not a question, you had all the money in the world, what do you want in life? How much money would you have? What places would you see? It's always good to listen to some music when you're writing goals. How would you travel? Private jet? Who would you travel with? Do you have kids? Do you want kids? Do you have a significant other? Describe those relationships. Where would you live? Are you renting a place, a penthouse in New York? Do you own a home with a white picket fence? Be descriptive. I want you to keep writing anything that comes to mind. There's no wrong answer. How big of a house do you see yourself buying? How many investment properties do you have? How much are you paying for that dream house? Get specific. How many units is that apartment building, the first one that you buy? The one I told you about was 8 units for me. Everyone at home, you should be writing them down. Make sure you're doing the exercise at home, get the most out of it. Think about goals for next year. Doesn't have to be 5 or 10 years. Sure, you could have 5, 10, 20-year goals. You know, how much money do you have when you turn 40? How much money do you have when you turn 50? What about health goals? Does everyone want to lose weight? Anyone want to become more healthy, more active? You want more energy? What will you do in the next 30 days to gain more energy? What activities might you be doing now that might be hurting you or hurting others? The goal could be to stop that activity. When you have an abundance of wealth as you're writing, what causes would you give back to? When you write a check to a charity of your choice, how much is on that check? All right, anyone want to share? It could be a 30-day goal, could be a 1-year goal. Does anyone want to share anything that they wrote down? You can type it in chat. Chris.
In the short term, I want to sell the business that I started this summer, and I want to land the right internship for the next summer.
Fantastic. Great.
For me, in the short term, let's say that being the next year, I want to get into just have something that I could rely on after college to get into that. Hopefully own an investment property, and then in the long term, I want to own a house free and clear.
Fantastic. Great. Anyone else want to share anything in chat? Okay, so now you have a bunch of things written down, right? Select your top 5. Top 5 that you want to do in the next 5 years. Within the next 5 years. Creating action that you could maybe even start action in the next 30 days. But circle the 5 that you want to accomplish, maybe in the first year, but if 1 year isn't long enough for what you wrote down, circle what you want to obtain in the first 5 years. So this quick exercise just helped you with your top 5 goals or priorities. So now that you have it on paper, might be on a computer, what have you, when you get to your dorms, homes, wherever, apartments, wherever you're living now, you got to put it on paper, print it out, write it out, whatever it is, and you got to put it somewhere where you'll see it every day. Mine is on the back of my closet door. And yes, my kids 9, 11, and 12 have their goals on their bathroom mirrors too. So that's the assignment. Let me tell you about the power of writing goals down. And you're gonna have to, yeah, I'm asking for a little blind faith. Because we talk about execution, right? It's all power, execution is power. Before we execute or take massive action, we got to know where we're going, right? And our goals or outcomes are where we're going. So when you talk about success, the nice thing is it's an even playing field. And what I mean by that is we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in the day. One of the most powerful things every morning is say, I've got X amount of hours before I go to sleep. How am I going to spend it? Right? What are my goals? How much time am I going to allocate to achieving my goals? If you get into that discipline or mindset, holy smokes, at your age, you're going to conquer the world. Because most people don't think about it. Most people think, okay, I'm going to sleep in, get up, go through the motions and see where the day leads me. That's 99% of the population. So just by knowing your outcome, that clarity is power. And that's really, I really want you guys to focus on every day of your life moving forward. Where am I today? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? So this next slide is an important one. So if you're at home, take a picture of it. I think everyone gets copies of slides anyway. So here's the success formula. We were just talking about it. You got to know your outcome, right? Clarity is power. So important though, you got to know the reasons why. Why is it a must? Right? If I just say I should go on a diet, what are the odds of me actually going on a diet? But if you say, if I say I need to lose weight because I want to be active and energetic and I want to be around for my 3 kids when they get older and I can be an energetic grandfather for their children, that puts a whole new meaning on things. Right? So you got to know the reasons why behind your goals as well, because that's what's going to be the motivation behind it to keep you on task. Once you know where you want to go, you got to take massive action, as you see here in the chart. Your potential are your goals. You take massive action. Your action creates results. We have to measure results of the action. So many people in life and in business do not measure. Right? Whether it's real estate or your health and investment, you have to measure what actions are giving me a result. What is that result? What is the return on that investment? When you have results, you create a belief system. If you're successful, you gain confidence. And now your belief system is stronger, which creates the higher potential and higher goals. You follow? It's revolving. The key, though, back to execution. So many people know what they want, they hope, and hope they win the lottery, right? If you know what you want, you got to take massive action, and that's the execution we're talking about. And it all does come back to property management, because that's the execution of operating a property. When you measure your results, are you getting closer to your goal or further? Because whatever that is, your measurement, if you're not getting closer, what do you need to do? Reevaluate. Change your approach. Reevaluate. Right? As Tony Robbins loves to say, if you're looking for a sunset and running east, you're in trouble. Right? You're never going to find that sunset. So that's the success formula. And I want to leave that with you because you have your goals now, you have your outcomes, and now it's about what massive action are you going to take to achieve those goals. So I think we've been talking for a little bit. What time is it? 1:45. Cool. Perfect timing. So let's go ahead and take a break now. I hope you don't mind. I'll finish my snack as we get going. All right, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone at home. You know, a lot of what we're talking about, or what we talked about so far, has almost nothing to do with real estate other than execution, mindset, right? And achieving your life goals, which I think are pretty damn important anyway. So we are going to be diving into more real estate, asset management, property management now. But I hope you guys agree. I know Kayvon just mentioned he really enjoyed talking about what we just talked about and learning this stuff, because to me, it truly, the stuff we just talked about, and I know we just really kind of scratched the surface in the first 45 minutes, but it has been absolutely life-changing for me. And that's why I'm sharing it with you guys, right? If I could do it, anyone could do it. And it's just these tools. And at the end of the day, it's just controlling your mind, right? Our mind is, our brains are scared, right? It's fear. It's like the survival brain, right? Don't do that. You might get hurt, you know, that type of thing. So oftentimes we're the ones holding us back. We're the only ones holding ourselves back from achieving our goals. How silly is that? True story. And that's where, if you learn to control your mind, what you can achieve in a short amount of time, it's just wild. I wanted to share a quick story to give a little weight behind our goal setting. So 4 years ago, in writing my goals down for a year, 3 or 4 years ago, I wrote down, just like same exercise we just did, but it was a little longer, probably 10, 20-minute exercise. I wrote down my dream of what I just envisioned, where my kids would grow up, where, you know, having this place with my wife. I wrote it down and wrote down exactly how much I would pay for this home. No idea where I knew generally where I wanted to be, but it wasn't like I saw a home and then I said, okay, that's my dream home. Nothing wrong with that either. But my point is, the brain is damn powerful. That exercise thing, writing down a goal, which, by the way, when I was writing it down, I thought was probably a 5 to 10 year goal, to give you an idea. The brain is so damn powerful. 2 years later, we bought our dream home. That was $100,000 off the number I wrote down of what we would pay. I get the chills talking about it. Now, why? I have no idea why. It works. Write down your goals. Keep them fresh. Keep them in front of you. Look at them in the morning. Say, what am I going to do today to get a step closer to those goals? At night, when you're getting ready for bed, you look at the goals. What did I do today to get me a step closer? Oh, nothing. All right, I got to change that tomorrow. Right? You guys are so young. You still have so much time. It's awesome. I wish I had time like you guys have. But hopefully that story gives you a little background. I've heard people that taught me this said the same damn thing. And then I put it into action. I go, holy crap, this thing works. This stuff works. Soon you'll be writing more goals, because you've already achieved the ones that you wrote down. So please make sure writing your goals is part of your daily routine. Now let's get into real estate, asset classes, financial, as I drop my snap, financial vehicles, right? This is investments in general. Many of you said, I'm interested in real estate for passive income, financial freedom, etc. So real estate will just be part of your investment portfolio. Now, these are the other types of real estate, right? What other vehicles do we have? You got stocks, bonds, and you got alternatives like crypto. Anyone here trading crypto? Hopefully you're doing it well. I used to dabble in it a little bit. I got out of it because I got scared. And I think we all know the story from there. But apparently, you know, it's going to be a great buy around 10,000. That's what I'm hearing. So if you love crypto, wait a little longer and then buy in. If you already bought it and you're still holding, I apologize. But anyway, there's other alternatives to investments, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve financial freedom, to give back and to provide for our loved ones. So why real estate? This is from Anthony's presentation. That was mandatory in the certificate program. Well, I'll tell you why real estate for me is highlighted in yellow. Direct control. As a property manager, you have direct control of the performance of that investment, right? Unlike stocks. How many here like the stock market, trading stocks? Yeah, good. Even if you're not trading, I suggest you read about it because you start noticing trends and then you can make actually a lot of money in the stock market too. So I'm a big Tesla fan. I'm a big Elon Musk fan. So I bought Tesla stock. How much influence do I have on the value of Tesla stock? Zero. Maybe if I purchase a car, that might help, but not much, right? So in the stock market, there's so many external variables that could affect your investment. Not bad, it's still a good vehicle. Don't get me wrong if you're buying the right companies. But as far as your control over that investment, it's zero. Same thing with cryptocurrency. Same thing with art or baseball cards or whatever it is that you know you're into investing in. So I love real estate because you have direct control over the investment, meaning you market the vacancies, you're in control of you know, setting the prices, you're in control of what the expenses are. So there are no surprises. Now, sure, you could get a pipe break and all that stuff, but generally speaking, it's the vehicle of which you have the most control of. And that's why I personally love it. Now, one of the downsides that I highlighted in red, and this is from, again, Anthony, management burden, and it could be complex to operate. Now, that's true. If you don't like dealing with people, you know, you're probably not going to be a great property manager. And it could be complex. You know, there's all kinds of city and state ordinances that you have to follow. And if you're not following the rules, it could be very costly with potential liability and lawsuits, right? So that's what he means by management burden and complexity. But like anything, guys and girls, if you know it, it's not complex, right? So what a lot of people think property management is complex. Well, if you're not doing it as your profession, it could be complex, but there's plenty. Either A, you can learn it. It's not rocket science. It means you got to want to, right? It's something that you want to do. You enjoy being around people, maybe managing people, et cetera. You could build your own little management company, which a lot of people do, and manage your own portfolio of real estate, or you could hire outside management. But either way, the control is there, and it's not very complex. By the way, there's all kinds of things happening right now with with COVID and the eviction moratorium. Maybe you've read about it or seen on the news. There's rent control ordinances that are being put into place for cities that never had it. If you have any questions on that at the end of this, I'm happy to talk about kind of current events and what's happening in the industry and how that affects the industry. And certainly it'd be interesting, right, from an investment standpoint. So if you have control of the property as you do as a property manager, you know, what is the main objective? Whether you're an asset manager or a property manager, as we described the two and the differences at the beginning, bottom line, your job is to maximize the value of that property, increase cash flow, increase value, right? And property value, as you guys may know from a capitalization standpoint, is NOI divided by market cap. If that's new, no problem, we'll review it here. Let me just move my screen. So cap rate. So if we say the value is NOI divided by cap rate, well, let's better understand each. And again, you may have seen this in other classes within the certificate program, so I won't spend too much time on it. But bottom line, a cap rate, as you see there in yellow, is the yield investors are willing to accept on their invested capital when buying something. So cap rates, bottom line, are an external factor, right? That's what we have here. I took this from Anthony's presentation a year ago. So these cap rates have changed. Bottom line, certain neighborhoods have different cap rates. So I'll say the more highly sought out locations are going to have lower cap rates, which means, as you see here, Manhattan Beach, right? The lowest cap rate on this chart. Manhattan Beach is pretty sweet, right? Real estate's really expensive. So bottom line is, if you want to buy an investment property in Manhattan Beach, basically you're saying the cap rate's going to be lower because more people want it, and therefore people will deal with a smaller return on their cash for that neighborhood, right? So Manhattan Beach might be sub 3%. Whereas you go to North Dakota, you might get 7-8%, right? Probably not as much appreciation in North Dakota as you would in Manhattan Beach, but you get the idea of a cap rate. The only thing I want you to know, it's an external influence. And, you know, one effect on cap rates, if you guys, if you know you're going to go buy something and it's going to give you a 4% return, right? Cash on cash return. What do you think is a major influence on that? If you're going to go buy something and you could get something, I'm going to get 4% on my money. Right, I'm trying to lead you to the answer of interest rates. Because if I have to go borrow money at now what 5-6%, right? It used to be sub 3, right, for interest rates on borrowing. So if I have to borrow money from the bank at 6%, am I going to go invest in something that's going to give me 4%? That's negative leverage, right? That's where the apartment real estate in general, both apartments and everything, when interest rates were so low, gave a lot of people a lot of positive leverage to invest in real estate. And real estate became one of the most popular financial vehicles or investment vehicles that we just talked about because of interest rates. So now with inflation, as we know, the feds are taking up the interest rates and really slowing things down, certainly from a single family home standpoint. And the rates in multifamily have gone up. Not as significant, but they certainly have gone up about double. So now, how do you think that will affect the buying market of, let's say, apartment buildings? You have high interest rates and cap rates that have yet to catch up. So you have lower cap rates and higher interest rates. Are you going to sell more transactions or less transactions in general? What do you guys say? Less. And that's what we're dealing with right now in the industry. So some are saying with the economy potentially slowing, et cetera, we might be able to find some good buys in the next 18 to 24 months. So we will see. Also gives a huge advantage for any buyers that are all cash buyers, right? They don't have to worry about the interest rates and they could go in and get some great properties at great deals. So cap rate, again, external factor. The other piece of that formula for value is NOI, right? Net operating income. And basically NOI, as you see here, you just take all the revenue of the property minus your expenses and operating the property gives you the NOI. This is internal influence. So this is what we have control of, right? We can ask for, you know, if we stick in the apartment world or even a commercial building, we could have a landscaper be there 5 days a week, or we could have a landscaper there once a week, right? A little difference in expense, probably a little difference in product too. But see, those are the things from an expense standpoint you have influence over. You also have influence over the income. How much are you going to rent that office space for, or how much are you going to rent that 1-bedroom apartment for? You can invest in renovating that apartment, right? Taking it up a level as far as scale and asking $2,500 a month, or you can leave it, you know, as is original condition at $1,900 a month. Either way, you have that control. Bottom line, from a value standpoint, the higher NOI, right? And it's your projected forward 12 months of NOI when you're thinking value. So we're going to get into some of the ways, because this is key. When you're buying your own buildings for investment, NOI is going to be your best friend. The quicker you can move that NOI number, the quicker you could get your income up or your expenses down, or the combination of the two, is the quicker you're putting more value in your pocket with that property. Any questions on cap rate or NOI? Pretty simple. So this is what I do every day, just maximizing revenue, maximizing NOI, and then we create raving fans for our clients and investors. Which, by the way, is a great book, Raving Fans, if you haven't read it. It's an easy one, but a great one. So we talk about value, we talk about different financial vehicles, and specifically now you have different asset classes within real estate, which we already know. You have the residential and commercial. Multifamily, sometimes people will refer to as residential. or put it under commercial, either way, multifamily apartments, however you want to look at it. But these are your different asset classes. Of the folks that are interested in real estate, and I know everyone is doing the certificate, what asset class are you most interested in? Type it in the chat too. Is it office? Is it industrial? Is it apartments? Is it single family home? What do you guys think here? What interests you guys the most?
For me, it's everything. I think that having a diverse portfolio would be a good idea. I recently started thinking about entertainment real estate. So like, where are these filmmakers filming their movies at? I didn't think about before. And so now it's something to consider as well.
Think about the pick just three. I think I'd do multifamily. What interests me the most would be hotels
Nice.
and vacation homes. I think just tourism properties
Nice.
is, especially in California.
Airbnb stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a big move, a big play lately. Anyone else? What interests you guys? Same? Multifamily? You guys? Awesome. Yeah, hotels, you get a great return on hotels. Obviously, the difference of hotels is just the level of services, right? And back to people management. But for those that operate hotels, you can make a fortune on those nightly rates. I love, for me, when I first got it started, even though I have a couple, I have 2 office buildings that I invested in, but most of it is multifamily. And I love multifamily because it's simple, right? Everyone needs a place to live, right? Not everyone needs an office to work, as we found out with COVID and the remote work. So there are external factors, right? And risk factors, I should say, that I think are a little greater in the other asset classes versus, say, single family homes, condos, townhomes, the residential or multifamily in general. So maximizing revenue stream. So if we're from a property, now you put your property management hat on, or your asset management hat, right? As we just defined earlier. What are some ways? Think of a multifamily, right? Think of an apartment building. It could be a 10-unit apartment building, or it could be a 400-unit apartment. What are some of the ways, when you think from an NOI standpoint, that you could increase your revenue? Yes. Oh, by the way, type it in the chat too.
Minimize vacancies.
Oh, I should minimize vacancies. Good. That's vacancy loss is huge. I should also look at this. So everything except vacation homes, good. Hotels, multifamily, mixed use, awesome. Great job, Peyton. And yeah, the vacation homes, I'll just make a quick comment on that Airbnb. It's been such a popular play. There's so many out there now. So I have a friend that had a few in Arizona, and he made a killing on it. I mean, the returns in year 1 on these Airbnbs were like no other asset class, right? So when someone's getting all those returns, you get a lot more players coming in. So now rates have come down in Airbnb, and it's not as lucrative. It doesn't mean it can't be. It just means there's a little more risk now. But anyway, so thank you guys on the chat being active. I'll make sure I'm looking at that screen a little bit more. So we talked about vacancy loss. So higher revenue, managing your vacancy loss is key in the make ready process, from the time someone moves out to the time it's ready to the time it's released. Great job on vacancy loss. What are some other ways to increase revenue?
Charging for parking and storage.
Oh, wow, ADU over here, nice. Charging parking charges, ancillary charges, storage. What are some other things you charge for? Laundry. Nowadays you got EV chargers. What's that? Trash, yeah. Water, sewer, and trash, right? Some of the utilities are being built out on a pro rata share. Kevin is advanced because he knows about ADUs. So great job, Kevin. Additional dwelling units. So that basically, right, in LA, it was an ordinance, actually California, statewide, in an effort to create more housing. Before, you could have a rec room, let's say a recreation room, which used to be, big back in the day, but not so much anymore. It's more common area space now. But back in the day, people would want to convert that rec room into a unit, and they couldn't. And the city would come in and say, "No, you gotta turn this back into a rec room, whatever." The new ordinance of additional dwelling units allows you or building owners to take space within a building and create units out of it. So ADU is a great way to add, yes, it can be built after, very good. So it's a great way to add revenue. How about rental rates? What are some things, if you're charging 1,500, how do you charge 1,800 instead of 1,500? Renovations, value add, so that's a value add strategy. If you haven't heard that, that's big in the industry. It used to be much bigger all through kind of 2012 through 2020. There were a lot of investors, a lot of people buying up properties and taking this value add strategy. So they would buy a building, maybe built in 1960, 1970, or even 80 now in LA. And what they would do is go in, renovate the whole thing. And where maybe the average rent was 1,500 a month, after renovation, now maybe they're collecting 2,200 a month, right? And I'll get to you in one sec, Chris, because that value add approach is actually the reaction of rent control, or I should say, what has created rent control in some of these eviction ordinances, these no fault evictions that you might have read about. Because you have these investors coming in to these buildings, essentially trying to kick everyone out, renovate, re-rent the property at a higher rate, they just made a fortune, right? But the problem with that is now you have folks that can no longer afford that, the new rates, right? Now they're flooding the market, looking for other places. So that's where some of the rent control laws were born from. So there's actually some merit, behind that. I know a lot of people, if you're on the owner side, you don't want rent control, but if you're on the tenant side, rent control is a powerful thing and a good thing. In my mind, it's just got to be a happy medium. It could be good for renters and it could be good for landlords. But it's interesting how a strategy can affect policy. And that's exactly what we saw over the last 10 years with value add. Any other ways? Anything on chat? ADU is a great one. I don't even think I have that on my list. Parking, storage, billbacks, utilities, laundry, TV, internet, and vending. Nowadays the new play as far as increasing revenue is, as you guys may know, at some of the apartments you may or may not have shopped for, the unit will come with internet or streaming, like DirecTV streaming, for example. And as part of that, they'll sell it to you for $60 a month, right? Because if you're ready to get it on your own, maybe it's 80, right? So you go, okay, cool. If I live here, I could get this stuff for a little cheaper. Well, the building's purchasing it, the bulk rate, right? They're paying maybe 40 per unit and then charging 60 per unit. So there's a $20 a month upcharge. So some of these ancillary charges. EV charging stations, obviously big with all the electric cars. There's usually a premium charged on the electricity used in the garage. Oh, pet, we're all my pet lovers. Pet rent, we got to pay for rent for our pets these days. So again, I would say similar to the Airbnb approach that we just talked about, when people are making a lot of money, you get a lot more, you get an influx of investment, right, in Airbnbs. Well, we talked about the interest rates and how the interest rates were so low, so long. Real estate became a great financial vehicle for investment. Well, when you get all these big institutions and all this money coming into multifamily, half of this stuff didn't even exist 10 years ago, right? It's because when you get more money, it's more competitive. More competitive means you're driving down cap rates, what have you, you're paying a higher value. And then for the investors to get their money back, to get a return, you have to do things like this to increase revenue. Make sense? The other side of NOI, right? We talk about increase revenue. The other side of NOI, or maximizing NOI, is trying to minimize expenses. And this is where we talk about a landscaper. You could have a cleaning crew come in and clean the building. Common areas, you could do that 7 days a week at the high-end buildings, or you could do it once a week. And that's obviously going to affect the amount of rent you could collect for that building. So you could cut services, as an example. You could leverage your size. So if you have a big portfolio, right? If you have 400 units or a 400 unit building, you'd probably negotiate a better price, right, with the plumber, whatever service provider, that might be that you're gonna need to spend money on. That's one of the things that gives us a competitive advantage as a management company. Having 14,000 units in LA, right? We negotiate these contracts to get our clients the best pricing. So the idea is, right, if I'm doing my job right, if I'm operating a building for a client, we should be able to get that client the same goods and services at a cheaper rate than he or she would be able to get on their own. Make sense? So that's just economies of scale. Implement a bidding process. I won't bore you with that. Obviously, just making sure you're getting the best vendors and getting the best price for the project at hand, and creating efficiencies. I won't bore you, but some of these buildings require to have an on-site manager. So if you have 2 buildings right next to each other, that building could share a manager, right? So now you're creating efficiencies. So the buildings are sharing the expense of the manager, but the residents benefit from accessibility of a full-time manager. If that makes sense. So those are some of the efficiencies that you could create with a larger portfolio as well. So value examples. So we talked about the definition of value, NOI, right, divided by cap rate. And so when you guys are looking to buy an investment property, this is how you create value. So remember I told you my Steve Geiger that pushed me into my first deal at the beginning? That was my first deal, 8 units, right next to Paramount Studios. The average rent was actually less than $1,250, rent control. I still have some tenants that have been there since I've owned it, and they pay like $700 a month, right? The new renovated units are over $2,000 a month. So bottom line, this isn't the exact numbers of the deal I did, so don't get confused with that, but I just wanted to illustrate the power of NOI and the power of operation over value, right? Meaning if you're doing it right, you invest, you do it right, you can make a lot of money. So in this example, 8-unit building, let's just say the average rent was $1,250. So the annual income is $120,000, right? Just annualizing the $1,250 across the 8 units. It's safe to assume when you're looking at a building, multifamily specifically, it's safe to assume 40% expense to income ratio. What I mean by that is you'll get a broker, right? If Chris is selling or Kayvon is selling real estate, if Kayvon is trying to sell me an apartment building, Kayvon's going to say, here's your income, here's your rent roll, here's your 8 units, all 1 bedrooms, here's what everyone's paying. Well, that's given, right? Thank you. But then Kayvon's going to say, and here are your projected expenses. Do you think brokers are 100% accurate on their expenses? No. No, right? Because their job is to show higher NOI, cap rate, get a higher valuation. They're trying to sell it for a higher price, right? So it's important not to take every OM, what they call it, offering memorandum, is don't take it at surface value. But here's the trick. Whatever the rent roll is, you figure for your own underwriting, figure about 40% expense to income ratio. If you want to be conservative, take 45%. Because in the inflationary period we're at right now, everything costs a little more, right? So what used to be 40 in the average is now probably industry-wide 45. So you could ignore the broker's projected expenses. All you need is the income to determine what amount of money am I going to buy this building for, right? So when you take 40% expenses, your NOI is $72,000 a year. At a 5% cap rate, your value for that 8-unit building is $1.4 million. So let's say this building is on sale for $1.4 million and you have $1.44 in your underwriting, and you go, you know what? It's my first building. Chris talked about this at my class in LMU. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to buy it. So you buy the building. Now what happens when you start increasing rent? Now I took this up higher because it's only 8 units, but you can imagine on a 100-unit building, the compound effect, right? So what happens if you increase rent $500 a unit per month? So that would be $1,750, not out of the ordinary for a 1-bedroom. But over your operation, as people moved out and you were able to increase 500 units per month, your new value of that building is now $2 million. You just made $600,000 by increasing rents, right, from a value standpoint. Now, if you were to increase those rents to $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom, which is $750 increase, Your new value is 2.3 million, just made $1 million. I put this out there not to say it's so simple, although this is being done all the time. It's being done all the time in all parts of the country. And we see it so much. It's a little more difficult when you get into rent control laws, etc. But you get the idea how much wealth can be built in a short period of time with your control over NOI, or in this case, specifically the revenue of a property. Any questions on the power of NOI control or cap rates, valuation? And now you see something like this, you realize why it's or such a popular investment vehicle, finance vehicle. Did you have something?
Yeah, I think it's a good question for now because you were just talking about it. Well, we were talking about rent controls and rent and how to maximize our revenue. I was wondering, is there ever any reason that an investor might want to invest in a rent controlled area or building?
Great question. And to make sure everyone at home, hopefully you heard it. Is there ever a situation where it makes sense or it's a good idea from an investment standpoint to invest in rent control? Did I get that right? So the answer is absolutely yes. I love the rent control strategy for a couple of reasons. But it's interesting when you think you're safe, right? COVID happens. So as an example, one of the reasons I went into that 8-unit building is it was rent control. And the rents were so low that I knew I was protected. My investment was protected because I can pro forma or forecast a 3% rent bump, which at the time was LA rent control. Then it was 4% before COVID. Every jurisdiction, it's different. California has a statewide rent control for any building over 15 years, but it's 5% floor plus CPI. Well, CPI is flipping 8% right now, right? So you could raise someone 10% in California rent control. So rent control is around, but it's different in every city, every state. So it's something that you need to make sure you're aware of what those rules are. But back to the 8-unit building, even though the rents were low, I knew I could count on forecasting 3% every year. And worst case, if no one moves out, I knew I was steady Eddie. It did not matter, right? Talk about external factors of rent in a certain market. Even if rents went down 10% in LA, 20% in LA, my rent control rents were so low, I knew I had my 3% bump every year. So it's slow and steady. So it kind of takes some of the guesswork out, because let's say it was not rent control for a second, that same 8-unit building, and everyone was paying $2,000. Well, if it's not rent control and everyone's paying market rate, now I'm vulnerable to whatever happens in the market. If market rates drop, my rents drop, or I have a higher vacancy factor, right? That was scary to me for my first building, not knowing, well, what if, right? Then you start thinking, what if? But if you have low rents and rent control, there's no what if. You're going to get 3% every year. So I thought, and then COVID happened. And then all rent control in LA, they did a rent freeze. So from March 2020 all the way until I guess it would be February of 2024, there's no rent increase. So even when you think you're safe with this projected rent increase, a pandemic hits, and then you're not getting your annual increases anymore. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So, and I should say, not only do you forecast that rent control, right, based on those market rents, but then now the play is in that investment strategy, because right then you're thinking, well, that's going to take a lot of time if it's 3% a year. Well, it's a lot of time until they move out. See, a lot of people move out organically. They need more space, right? Whatever happens in life, they move out of state. When you get someone move out in a rent control deal that you bought based on the current cash flow, when they move out, if they're paying $1,000 and your market rate is $2,000, you just killed the value, increase the value big time, right? One unit, $1,000 difference per month. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the strategy there would be, okay, I'm going to buy this rent control. I'm going to build in this automatic 3%, which is safe. But if let's say I'm lucky and I get 4 people move out, half the building of the 8 units, you just made a killing on valuation. So a lot of people are scared of rent control, which means, better potential opportunities to purchase. But I would never run away from a building for investment because of rent control. And in fact, in some strategies, I like it better. Go ahead.
I don't know if there's a gray area, it's not really like specified, but I don't know why I don't see a lot more like. People who like own like a bunch of real estate, like asset management companies, why they don't have their own internal broker representation? Can't they just put the commission back into the property to get it as a sort of down payment assistance, or is that?
Yeah,
Something
so.
that's more of a gray area.
So if I understand the question, why don't more asset management companies have their own brokerage on? Is that
Yeah, why
right?
aren't
So,
they like self-representing?
okay, good. So twofold, many do actually. And I would say some don't, some of the larger. Maybe asset management groups don't. We don't as a property management group, which I think a lot of people would probably take your same question and say, why don't you guys offer brokerage? It's not out of the question to maybe do it sometime in the future, but it's interesting. There's an element of taking a niche in the market and really exploiting it, being be the best at it. Where there could be a potential conflict of interest, right? If I'm representing the operation for a client, and then I say, oh, I want to sell your building, or hey, I want to sell you a building. It works, and a lot of people do it, don't get me wrong. But in my world specifically, and this could be the same with some asset management companies, to your question, so much of our business comes from brokers. Right? The Marcus and Millichaps of the world, the Lee and Associates, these big brokerage firms, they love working with us because they know we're not doing brokerage. If they give us a client to operate for, they know that when that client is ready to sell, we're giving it right back to that broker, right? They're not going to be competing with us for that brokerage business. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah.
So that, but it's a good point. I mean, there's many houses do operation and brokerage, or asset management and brokerage, so they can use those commissions to down payments and investment. And I would say most of the smaller operators do both. And I would recommend doing both as a smaller operator as you're getting started, because that income will really help you build your portfolio. Any other questions? Nope, rock and roll. Oh, not break time already, is it? We're gonna skip that break. What time is it anyway? 2:30. All right, 4 more hours. Okay, we'll go through a couple more slides, and then we'll do a 5-minute break to keep everyone awake. All right, so here's what's cool. This takes you back to marketing class, right? Marketing 101. The 5 P's back in the day, but I added a 6 for processes. Because I think in business, process is so important. All business is a damn process that you could duplicate, right? If you could duplicate a process and make money, that's scalable, right? And that's all business is a defined process. So 5 categories that you can change to make any business successful. So the good news about this class, we're not only just talking real estate. You could take these 5 categories across any industry, any business. And it's great actually to analyze if you're looking to invest in businesses. You could take a look at these items for that company to see if it's worth investing in. So the first one is product. In respect to real estate, that would be what real estate, what asset type is it? Is it office? Is it retail? Is it multifamily? We were just talking about. Is it high end or low end? Right? Also referred to as class A, B, or C. In real estate, how much influence do you have as the property, or I'm sorry, the product? How much influence do you have as the asset manager or the property manager? The product itself. The type. Very little, right? You're not going to turn an office building, generally speaking, into a multifamily. So the product you don't have much control over as the operator. It's located where it's located, which we'll get into, but it's either multifamily, mixed use, retail, or office, right? You don't have much effect on the product itself. You do on the services, but not on the real property. Place, location, where is it physically located? How much influence do we have on the location? Can we pick it up and move it? Say, hey, I don't like.
Thistle did that. Thistle did that, right?
Probably. Oh, Thistle did?
Thistle Apartments, yeah.
Oh, they totally renovated. Oh, I don't know.
No, they moved it. They moved it.
Oh, how bad. So there are exceptions. But generally speaking, you're not gonna take a building and move it, right? So the place you have very little influence on as well, so. And then the price. Price you could look at. So remember, this is fixing an operation. So if you're looking at, maybe you buy a building and it's not kicking off very much money. These are the 6 categories that you want to analyze to what do I need to change of these 6 categories to increase my return or get things back on track, right? So this is what we do every day. We don't have much influence on the type of asset as we talked about. We don't have much influence on the location. But do we have influence on the price?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we talked about in NOI, our goal is to achieve the highest rental rate possible. So how do you increase rental rates? We talked a little bit about renovation, right? But just sticking to the slide real quick, it's understanding the market, right? Depending, let's stick with apartments. A lot of people like apartments. If I have an apartment building in Westchester, right here at LMU, how do I come up with the rents for a 1-bedroom? Anybody? How do you figure out the rental rates? If you're gonna set one of your 1-bedroom units for rent, how do you set the price? Yeah,
You take a look at like comparable assets in
Comps.
the area.
take a look at comps, look at other buildings in the area that are similar style, similar year built, similar amenities, etc. So you're gonna look at comps. That's gonna help you also when deciphering when to buy something. If you see something that's under rented, it's a great opportunity to buy. So if you're looking at comps say it's $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. Now you have the ability as the property manager or the asset manager, you can add amenities. The biggest thing now, some of you guys talked about hotels, apartment living is becoming more like hotel living. Meaning the menu of services is almost insane, right? Back in the day, you would put up a for lease sign in front of an apartment building with a phone number. You get a call, they look at it, they rent, you pull the for lease sign out of the ground and you're done. Nowadays, right, you could have doorman, you could have laundry services, you could have valet services, etc. at some of these high-end properties. So you have a bunch of influence as the property manager or the asset manager to increase. So even though the market says in Westchester that I could rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $2,000 a month, if I add these services, it's going to cost me a little more. I could maybe get $2,400, right? So those are some of the things that we have to consider. So you also mentioned from a revenue standpoint, vacancy control, meaning control your vacancy loss, right? Keep it rented up to keep your income higher. So if you have a vacancy issue, it might be a price issue, right? Are we too high compared to the comps, right? etc. So price we definitely have control over, and is probably the easiest when you start thinking about dialing levers, pulling levers to make changes of an operation. The price of a unit for rent, office, industrial, multifamily, it's the easiest lever to pull. In other words, if you got a vacancy sitting there, the easiest thing to do, lower the rent and it'll rent, right? You'll lease it. But it's not always the smartest thing to do, because once you start lowering the rent, you're lowering your NOI, you're lowering the value. So I believe it's the 4th P, we're talking about promotion and marketing. So when we set our prices, how are we going to promote it? Right? Who's our audience? And promotion is just that, marketing. How do you get the word out? So it's a very simple formula in the real estate world. It's all supply demand, like most things in business. The more demand you create for your units that you're renting, the higher the price point, right? And good marketing and good promotions will gain you a lot more demand for that unit. And that's the goal with marketing promotion. Now, what are some of the ways, if we stick to the asset type of apartments, and you can type it in chat too, what are some of the ways to market a vacancy for a building, an apartment specifically? Anybody? Come on, you're all on the internet, you know everything. Websites, apartments.com, sure. Craigslist, how else do you guys find apartments?
I know that you specifically use like a website for like specific colleges, like there's like, I forget what the name,
Yeah.
UCLA, I think you did that.
Yeah.
That was you guys?
Yeah. So There's specific, what Chris is referring to is specific like student housing websites as an example. We operate one for UCLA. How else do you find an apartment? Craigslist? Anyone look at Craigslist for an apartment anymore? That's still a decent one. How about social media? You ever see apartment advertising on social media? Kind of, sort of, no? So mainly online, right? But nowadays you could spend these buildings, especially these higher end buildings competing for, you know, whether it's student housing business or for residents in general. They could end up spending, you know, greater than 5,000 a month just in marketing. Now, those are larger buildings, and that would include, you know, social media, all your paid listings like through apartments.com, et cetera. Oftentimes in trying to, if it's a brand new building, right, you got to try to create as much demand as possible because every day those units sit empty, right, the owner is bleeding money. So when you're looking at, you know, lease ups, as we call it, brand new construction, another way of marketing is understanding who the biggest employers are in the area and going and visiting those employers and saying, hey, we got this beautiful apartment building. Maybe some of your employees would be interested. Can we leave flyers? Can we send out an email blast? What have you? Usually work with HR departments. So bottom line, creating more demand. You know, street signage is another big one. Especially these apartment buildings on busier streets. That's why you'll see some huge banners, right? Especially down here in Playa Vista. You probably can't drive by on Lincoln without seeing now leasing or for rent with a big website. You know, these days and trying to create that demand so to drive higher prices. And remember, the more demand, higher prices. It goes back to creating raving fans. So people. As I put here, the single most important element of successful investment is your team. When you think of a duplex or a fourplex, you don't think of a manager providing a service. So when I say people are the single most important element, I'm thinking larger building, right? When you walk in and there's a leasing office, how is that person with customer service, right? How do they show the building? So the team you hire at the larger buildings, the larger assets, are so important. And that's where, remember at the beginning, we talked about asset management is managing numbers. And this is where the people management comes into play. Property managers manage people. So you got to have the right on-site team, which includes managers, includes leasing agents, includes the maintenance people, because that's the service being provided. So even if you do have a fourplex as an example, when those maintenance issues come up, you got to have the right team to respond. The right maintenance person or the right vendor, and you have to do it timely, right, to keep them as your tenants to reduce your vacancy loss. So when you think of people, as I mentioned, managing people is probably the single hardest thing to do in business. And if you could master that, it's more of an art. If you could master that, you could bring value to any organization across any industry. So, excuse me, if you have the opportunity to take people management classes here at LMU, sign up for them because it'll help you in your career. And that's really where the E&J Gallo Winery had a huge training program on managing people. You also, as you build your own business, let's say you start your own asset management company or your own property management company, or you're buying buildings that you're operating yourself, which is also common because of that income stream is important at the beginning. You got to have the right hiring process. And if you guys want to shorten your learning curve on how to hire someone, there's your Bible to hiring. I created a whole hiring process based off of this book, and it will save you a lot of time and a lot of money. Another book down there is called The Happiness Advantage, and that's also just dealing with management, how to manage people in general. So you got to develop the right hiring process. And then once you have the right people, the right on-site team, right, because you have a great hiring process, now you need the support structure around them. And this all just comes from managing people. What I mean by support structure is you can't just hire a manager and leave them alone. You got to support them, right? And that's all of us. We're all human. We all love support, and we just excel when we're in a team environment rather than when we're working on our own. And here's a little video hopefully you could hear it at home, but that we developed.
When you're looking
At
for a
Moss.
job, it's about finding the right fit. And at Moss, the right fit isn't a business proposition. It's personal. Our people come from many different backgrounds, but they have a lot in common. They insist on being heard. They take pride in having an impact, and they're not afraid to make unique contributions. At Moss, we thrive on diversity, and we depend on our people to give us a wide range of perspective to every opportunity and problem that come our way. We believe that the best idea should always win, no matter where it comes from. But a great idea can't win if it's not heard by the right reason. So at Moss, we have an open door policy that goes one of the ways into our people want stability and security. And we give it to them through technical training and support programs, each designed to fuel their ambition, expose them to opportunities, and build their careers. Moss and Companies is a family company. And we live by 7 core values, which are the soul of our workplace. We're looking for team players who are willing to be fearless in the pursuit of what sets us apart. We want creative individuals who can push ideas beyond boundaries and then take the initiative to be the solution to the problem. We want competitive individuals who inspire greatness in others, but also know how to show empathy and make a real difference in people's lives. Most of all, we want people who are passionate in everything that they do. Moss and Company continues to grow, and if you join our team, so will you. Because at Moss, it's personal.
So it's just an example. Oh, let me get rid of that. From a recruiting standpoint, as you grow and scale, property management is a service industry, it's service business. So if you grow we talk about a process, business being a process that you could scale. Once you start scaling the service industry, you need the right people, right? And so we're constantly hiring with our growth, and we put that video together now. It's been a couple of years, but Paris, who was on that videos at the time, was one of our property managers, and now she's one of our regional managers. So it's actually a great story with her advancement and growth and progress within our organization. The last P to review is processes, and it's obviously the 6th one, so it's not the original 5 that you get from marketing class. But really, again, in any industry, I put it up there, and it's the constant, never-ending improvement. So when you think you have something down, anything in life, right, you got to reevaluate. What can you do differently? Can we do the same thing better? How can we increase efficiency? And, oftentimes, how can we utilize or leverage technology? I think the key, though, is that constant, never-ending improvement in everything you do. And this is kind of that whole success formula, right? When you take massive action, you measure, are we closer to the result? Great, what can I do differently, right? How can I improve it? And that's the success formula that we reviewed earlier. And it's the same thing when it comes to processes. When you get into processes of asset management or property management, holy smokes, there's a lot. From the accounting department to the operations to the new business to transitions when we bring on new properties, et cetera. There are thousands of processes that need to be defined and then reevaluated constantly to continue that improvement. And I think if you guys in your jobs, when you're looking, or even if you're starting your own thing, great, but if you're looking for a company to go look for, think about that. Think about their approach on constant and never-ending improvement. Do they have it down where they think they're done and good, or are they open-minded and always looking to improve? I think that's important. At least it would be for me in finding the right organization to work for. So with that, those are the 6 P's that we went through. We're getting close to the end, so we'll do a 5-minute break, get some water, move around a little bit, wake up. I know it's Friday afternoon, and then we'll go into what I think some of you will really like, which is more of the technology side and how we utilize technology in the property management business to, at the end of the day, increase NOI or to increase value. There's so much, as I mentioned, with the influx of investment into real estate, there's so much technology that has fallen a lot of new startups. So there's some great companies for great opportunities that, coming out of school, if you're looking for a startup situation to work for, a technology startup. There's a bunch in the real estate world right now. I'll mention a few of them. We'll go over some of them and talk about and answer any questions of how we utilize technology in our industry. Before we break for 5 minutes, do you guys have any questions? Or any questions online? Type it in the chat if you have any questions. You guys are good?
I have a couple actually.
All right, we got a couple of questions.
Actually, I have to agree.
Yeah, two.
So first is, if the owner of a building that you manage sells, how would that work on the property management side? And like, if they want to keep Moss or if they want to do a different management?
So if an owner of a building wants to sell, there's a good chance that owner might have their own operator, right? They may operate themselves, or they might have a relationship with a different management company. So in that case, there's a chance that we would transition that property to someone else in the sale. There's also a chance that buyer, meets us in the process of buying it, right? And doing all the inspections and looking at the financials that say, oh, wow, you guys are great. You know what you're doing. You already know the building. We'd love to keep you. And then we would retain the business. So it varies, by transaction.
Okay, the second question I had, thank you. The second question was, you talked about the hiring process. My question is, how do you find and hire a rock star employee if you have a way of doing that?
Find and hire a rock star employee. That is the challenge, I think, for many organizations, especially as you guys probably heard in the news or read about. It's kind of the job market, right? So maybe a little different now with kind of the transition, but for a while there, it was an employees market, right? So people would come in kind of demanding, hey, you want me, I want this amount, right? So it was challenging to find the right people because it was employee market, if that makes sense. So it's a tight labor market. And then you end up trying to find people that are already in existing jobs and you're trying to steal it, right, from competitors. There's no magic formula. And I think if any HR department, if you had one, it would be a huge benefit. There's a bunch of recruiters out there, right, that get paid for placing people. They get 20% of that person's annual salary. There's a shitload of recruiters out there. I don't love dealing with recruiters personally, because at the end of the day, the recruiter is just trying to place this person for them to get paid, right? So it might not be the right fit, but they take this person, because they get paid on when we hire them, and it's fairly expensive. LinkedIn has a great program that we're a part of. It's called LinkedIn Recruiter. And so you can network and post jobs, right? And within your network, and it goes to fit industry people. So that's one way to contact or find good people that may not be looking, right? Because that's sometimes the key. Otherwise, it's kind of the old school job postings, not only on websites, but Indeed is a big one out there that you see a lot of advertising on. Glassdoor is another place. It's kind of the Yelp for business, right? That some people will find reviews on a company and then elect to maybe want to work for them. So there's a whole gamut of ways of finding people, but it's a very imperfect world. And so much of that ebbs and flows with the hire or the industry in general, right? Is it employers market or employees market? So all those are a big factor. When jobs are tough to find, it's a lot easier, right? You can post something, you'll have 10 people fighting, 10 qualified people fighting for one job. That makes it a lot easier when it's vice versa, when maybe of 10, maybe one is qualified for the job you're looking to fill, and that person has multiple offers. And I think that's just an element of the industry in itself. Good questions.
Thank you.
Anything else before we break? 2 more hours. I couldn't talk for 2 more hours if I tried. All right. Technology. So remember, everything goes back to NOI. So how do we leverage technology? So this wasn't here last year, but I want to give you guys some ideas from an operating standpoint. And it might give you great ideas of what you might be able to introduce from a product or service standpoint, right? And bring your own company to the industry. So when you think of NOI, one of the big line items on expenses is your payroll line item, so the on-site property manager. Well, your on-site property manager has to lease, collect the rent, give great customer service, right? Everything, right? Answer phones, upset residents for a pipe break, whatever it might be. So you can imagine that that person is pretty busy on site. So some of the technology that has come to the industry has been to make the on-site manager's job more efficient or easier, right? Because if we could, like, for example, rent payment processing, it's nothing new, but we utilize Demuso. Demuso actually came and spoke here. It's a startup company a few years ago here at Alameda. I know the founder, Damien. So we utilize them. Now, the cool thing with Demuso, now think of old school rent collection for a second. Everyone would pay rent by writing a check, right? And they would walk it in or put it in a Dropbox, give it to the manager. So the manager used to have to scan the check. It's a whole manual process. Some would, even back in the day, have to run it to the bank, etc. So to take the money, stamp the back, scan it through the scanner, make the deposit, etc., and then write down, right, to keep the record straight of what unit paid, what amount, etc. You could imagine, come the first of the month when all the rent was due, probably the first to the fifth, what do you think that on-site manager was doing most of the time? Processing rent payments, right? So Demuso, and there's many other companies out there like Quick Pay Lease, whatever it is. There's a bunch of them. Bottom line, the whole idea is to take the whole rent payment process automated. So a manager never has to do anything. So come the first, Demuso has an app. All the residents are logged in on that app, and they could just do automatic payments. So the first, hits whatever the ledger says is due. And it goes through the operating software. And so now all the manager has to do is look at a report to see who paid, never has to touch a paper check. Now, some people want to pay by paper check. So all the I'll say younger demographic never wants to pay, like they don't even have checks, right? So they're paying online. But then you get an older demographic that has always paid by check and wants to continue to pay by check. So the nice thing about the technology of Demuso, how you guys could, on the case, you see them advertise, you could take a picture of a check for a deposit and just do it remote. Same thing now for paying rent. So if that resident wants to say, no, I've always paid by check, I want to continue paying by check, no problem. Go ahead and write your check. Just take a photo of it and send it through Demuso to us, and then that's how they pay their rent. Back in the day also, we required guaranteed funds. So that means money order or cashier's check for move-in money, right? Because we didn't want somebody to give us a bad check, move in, and then we got an eviction situation, which would be costly, and then not collecting, increasing that vacancy loss that we talked about earlier. So now, instead of asking for, okay, you want to move in, go to the bank, get guaranteed funds, that is also a service now, the technology. They have it where a resident could go online and they could select guaranteed funds and just do it all online. And the technology looks into their bank account, sees they have the funds, grabs the funds, and guarantees payment. So there are no trips to the bank. So those are just some examples of technology, or one example of really how the rent collection process has changed over the last 5 years. Back in the day, previous 5 years, we were 100% paper check, maybe 7 years now. Now, we probably have 90% of all rents being paid through the technology paperless. We might still have another 10% holding on to those old paper checks that they won't change. But it takes probably 4 days of time for an on-site manager to process and all the record keeping, to now no time, right? Because it's all automated. So that gives you a good example of the rent payment processing and making that more efficient. Another big thing, like in many industries, is AI technology. So in the leasing process, you may call an apartment building and somebody answers and it's a computer, right? I don't know how you guys feel about it, but they help you like a real person and answer questions, etc. Same thing on chatbots, right? Online. If you're interested in a 1 bedroom, you could get your main questions answered immediately by the computer, who acts as if it's a real person. Some companies have the AI service, and then they'll have an operator on standby. So if the AI trips up, a live person can come in and ask questions. One of the big things, like in any industry, but one of the big challenges in the apartment world, specifically, or the property management world, is giving real-time answers, right? We're all instant gratification shoppers. If you're looking for something, when you call, you want that call answered. You know, only 17% of all missed calls leave a voicemail these days, at least in the apartment world. And I think it's a trend across the board. So if you don't have the right staff or enough staff to answer the call, you just missed the lead. So we have technologies that capture all the information of somebody that's calling, a prospective resident. So a missed call, the manager can come back to the computer, see who it was, and call them back immediately to make sure we collect that lead. Another exciting, excuse me, and new technology in COVID, during COVID, this pandemic, when the LA has an eviction moratorium, which allows people not to pay rent, right, if they're affected by COVID. So if I'm a resident, I said, oh, sorry, landlord, I was affected by COVID, and I just tell them that monthly, I never had to pay rent. So what you had was people leaving one place that they didn't pay with a large balance, going into a new place and utilizing falsified documents, right? Because if they could get into a place, they didn't have to pay. So fraud protection became, or fraud detection became probably the single biggest thing in our business. Because during the pandemic, we didn't want to lease to someone that wasn't going to pay. So one example of that is a company called 2 Dots. They're also a startup, and basically they use AI technology, computer learning, that will read documents uploaded, bank statements, proof of income, etc., and see if they were doctored, right? And making sure everything lines up. They look at font, spacing, etc., and it's all computer learning. So this we implemented in our operation, and we will actually have it's a small percent, but we'll get fraud detected on these documents. Can you guys believe this? You could go online as a renter and purchase pay stubs and bank statements online. So you could go and, fraudulently buy some, get into an apartment, buy something, right? Anyone that wants bank statements or pay stubs, there's services online. So fraud detection services are huge in our business. To give you an idea, so what if someone gets in and they don't pay? In Los Angeles, specifically, and really California, the eviction process, forget about the pandemic, but the eviction process could easily be 3 to 6 months. So when you have a smaller building, it's your first building, you talk about vacancy loss, you put the wrong person in that doesn't pay, it's an expensive process. Not only the timeliness of 3 to 6 months and the loss of rent, but everyone has a right to a jury trial. The jury trial, eviction, the attorney is minimum $8,000, right? So you could see the importance of fraud detection and tenant screening in general. So there's a lot of new technologies out there for tenant screening and fraud protection, which is probably the main, I would say, need of the industry at this point. And that was really kind of pushed up by the pandemic. Automated collection process after move out. So PayReady is a company, it's been around for about 8 years now, that if somebody owes, back in the day, you would have to send that to a collection agency. Now it's all automated. They send things out to the person to get payment, and they all have their own collection companies that work with that technology platform. And it's great because of the reporting that they keep as well. So, and that whole process is now automated. And then you get into smart home technology. Holy smokes, smart home technology. I mean, where do you begin and where do you end? From keyless entry to, everything being controlled by your phone. A lot of new construction has a lot of the smart home technology, to your blinds being, connected to your phone, etc. So smart home technology, it's not as big in the apartment world. I mean, it's getting there. It's probably more so in the single family world, But you are seeing more and more technologies and services in the apartment world. Going after, trying to create more demand for their units. So smart home technology is big in the apartment world right now. And then finally, just to name a few, the intercom technology. Back in the day, again, you had just find your person, dial up a phone, right? The old phone lines, and then they would buzz you in. Nowadays, you have keyless entry, your phone becomes your key. You can give access to your unit and the building to a friend that's coming over for a certain time, and that key expires. These intercoms now also have facial recognition. So you can be recognized as a resident, the door opens automatically. You could also have a lot of control of who's coming and going and exactly what times within the perimeter of the building, not necessarily the individual units. And that's all obviously automated, so you don't have any keys, fobs anymore. Your phone becomes your key. So many things technology wise in the apartment world. Do you guys have any, maybe where you live or things you heard of, any other technologies that maybe I didn't mention? I know there's a bunch out there. I was just scratching the surface. Did we miss any? Go ahead.
Well, one thing I kind of learned about was I think there's like a new way where you paying rent can go towards your credit score or something.
Yeah, good call.
So
We also implemented that. And that basically is to help residents or renters build credit. There's a bunch of different services where we report to the credit agencies now just the positive of on-time rent payments. So that's a good one as well.
Is there a specific technology you use or like a business you use for that?
Yes, there are a bunch of different ones, and the one we use, going blank on the name, but Rent Dynamics is one, as an example, to give you an idea if you want to look into one. They offer that as well. So those are just some of the ways technology can help improve NOI. We talked about improving NOI, right? Increasing efficiencies will decrease cost and then therefore increase value, right? At the end of the day. Another thing I want to mention as we get close to time here. I want to give you guys some extra bonus material on the psychology. You guys up for that? The psychology, remember, all this stuff you get to use everywhere else, and in all aspects of life, which is pretty cool. So we talked a little bit about, the success formula, writing goals down, etc. We talked about the number of hours in a day, right? If you have 24 hours in a day and you sleep, let's call it, how often do you guys sleep these days? 6 hours, 8 hours? How much do you sleep?
8 hours.
Let's say 8 hours for a second. And sleep is good, by the way. All the studies show sleep is like the foundation of health, right? So if you're not getting enough sleep, make sure you start getting enough sleep. So 16 hours in a day, right? If you spend 8 of them sleeping. So really, when you start asking yourself, if I have 16 hours, what am I going to do with those 16 hours? What do you need to be effective for 16 hours? Food, energy, health, right? Vitality, all that stuff. So all of that comes from, we talked about controlling the mind and mental state, right? So you could walk in to somewhere, call it a holiday party, then I have to go to a holiday party. If I go in walking like this, oh, I'm so tired, I have to talk for 2.5 hours, right? To 400 people at LMU, all live, right? Now I'm gonna have to change the story a little. You're defeating yourself. So I'm gonna give you 3 keys, 3 things, 3 tools to control your mental state at all times. You guys ready for it? If you master this, you master your energy and everything in life. So it's known as the triad. Number 1 is your focus. So this is all how you feel. Okay, so you're not looking at external things happening that controls your emotion. So number 1 is focus. What you focus on will affect your attitude, right? So are you focusing on the negative or are you focusing on the positive? Right? Are you focusing on shit, I got to be here for 3 hours? Or are you focusing on, hey, maybe this guy could give me one thing I could walk away from and really change my life? A little different, right? I mean, just talking like that changes how you feel. So it's what you focus on. What are you focusing on in your mind? And that's one element that'll affect your attitude or your mental state. Number two is your language, like what we just talked about. Shit, I have to go to this thing for 3 hours, or you know what? I'm gonna go to this thing and maybe I could learn something that I could use in my life. Just how you talk, right? I coach baseball as well, an 8th grade team up in Ventura County. And some of these kids will strike out and come off, I suck. Whoa, change your language, right? I'm big on, hey, change your language. I suck, or hey, I just missed it. I can't wait to get back up, right? That's a big difference. So your focus, your language, and finally, one of the biggest is your physiology, or how you use your body, right? If I say I'm depressed, how do you think I'm going to look? Call it out. Head up or down? Down. Shoulders back or forward and down? Shoulders up or down? Down, right? Back or forward? Probably forward. Standing straight up or hunched up? Right? You can make yourself feel pretty shitty just by how you use your body. Vice versa, you can make yourself feel amazing by how you use your body. So, you know, if you stand like Superman or Superwoman, chest down, hands on here, studies show you can increase your testosterone some percentage by standing like that for 2 minutes. Isn't that amazing? The act of smiling tricks your brain for dopamine. So if you feel like shit, all you have to do is smile. You're helping your body. So those are the 3 things: focus, physiology, and your language. If you could control that, you could control your mental state. If you could control your mental state, does that have an effect on your energy? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes. So when you go into a room and you're trying to make an impact, whether it's an interview or you're going to find a date, do you want high energy or low energy? High energy. So by controlling this triad, if you master it, you master your life. But it's like a muscle. If you don't practice it, you're not going to get it. Right? After a hard day at work, and back to Don Miller's story, right? Everyone has a story. We all have identities, right? In our minds, it's our belief system. So what is your identity? Think about it. Is your identity, tired? Whatever it is, or for example, you have different identities for different situations. So one of my identities for my 3 boys is super dad. Right? It's pretty hard to be super dad and come home tired. Right? If you come home tired, you're not super dad. Right? It's hard to be super dad if you're out of shape. So one of the things I do, I work out just so I could be super dad to my boys, right? Be a good example. So anyway, it's the whole identity in your mindset, in your energy that will, if you learn to control that, it will have huge compound effects on your life, in all aspects of life, and your career, especially when you're going to look for your first job, and how you perform. Because if you have that high energy, you're always that person that has their emotional state in check. You become a magnet. People want to be around you. You're going to have more friends. You're going to have more dates. You're going to have more job offers, whatever it might be. So anyway, that's came from Tony Robbins, the Tony Robbins triad. So what is it? Number 1, focus to control your mental state. Number 2, doesn't have to be in any order. Physiology. 3, language. All right. Any questions on that? It's a good tool. Use it, folks. Use it. Let's see. I have another video here. I think I'll leave it with, this kind of just incorporates everything we built at Moss from a culture standpoint. So I want to share it with you. And then we'll go into questions and answers.
I think the culture here is respect, team building, caring, and development. Really caring about who the team members are.
Yo siempre Moss va a ser mi segunda familia.
This company has been so good to me on so many different levels that I wanna do a good job for them.
Siempre, todo el tiempo, no siempre, porque pues yo aquí crecí con ellos y yo aquí me voy a retirar.
Their support and their role in my life has been tremendous. I've grown so much in ways that like I never thought I'd ever. It's a being in the room. There's the compassion and empathy that culture is built out of.
Pues uno se siente bien, que ellos lo hacen a uno así, que lo vean como familia.
Bond with people, understand and see what their skill set is, focus on what their skills are, and make them the best that they are.
Everybody has the capability to learn something new as well. You just have to sometimes take a little bit more time and patience.
Boss pushes, they want you to be better at your job.
I'm an associate, a bachelor's, an MBA. Find my first house. I started off at 23 here with absolutely none of those things.
They go out of their way to make sure that everyone is cared for.
You're talking to your family and you're excited. It's like the same kind of feeling. They always let us know that it's personal because they care to hear what we have to say.
They listen to you, hear you out, try to give you advice, or sometimes just try to get advice out of you, for you to figure it out yourself.
Everyone reaching and pitching in to help each other. Definitely, that is something that's built into the company. That's just in
Everything that we have been for so many years of developing that culture is shared.
I want to be that person that one day can make a difference and help out someone.
You have to have compassion and empathy, but you also have strength and flexibility.
it's a diverse place to work.
Which is how it should be.
The soul of it, it's the family.
It's your family, you know.
Everybody respects and loves one another.
This is my family. It's not just work.
I get really touched with everybody because, you know, we all came so close.
It's so exciting to see something like this grow so quickly and to be a part of it. It's an honor.
Okay, guys. And girls, we're 2:30, what is it, 3:30 almost? So enough time for any questions and answers. Feel free in the chat to throw your questions in there. Anything you guys like to talk about, any current events, industry specific, anything at all. Some of the psychology we went through, anybody, and type it in chat as well.
So
Yes,
I had a question pop up in the middle of the presentation. Didn't want to ask because it would not have been relevant. But my question is though, if you own an apartment building, is there like any legal conflict of interest if you give it to your own management company to operate for you?
No. Easy. No, and in fact, if you raise money and buy a building for a group of people and you want to manage it yourself and pay yourself a management fee, as long as it's disclosed, because it's normal, that's not a problem either. No conflict.
Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions? Let's get some on chat. See if they're still there.
Hi, Chris. I had a question.
All right.
Yeah, so I saw in your bio that you had mentioned that you're a general partner for a commercial office building. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about that. Just kind of like how you got into the commercial real estate, kind of like how that partnership is structured, and kind of like a little bit more about that office building that you own.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That's Kevin, right? Yes. Awesome, Kevin. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so I did mention I'm a general partner. So remember, back to the goal setting, I wrote down in one of the goals to be a general partner on a building. I didn't know if it was going to be office or multifamily, because in many I'm an investor and some I own outright. But in this case, it's a 25,000 square foot building in Westlake Village. It's a beautiful Class A building, and I preface it, Kevin, with I started it with a goal. It was something I wrote down. And when you write down, as I mentioned, something magical happens. Your brain figures out a way to do it. So in my business, we do a lot of networking with the brokerage firms, right? One of the big brokerage firms out there is Lee & Associates. So the president of Lee and Associates, and he said, I'm thinking about moving my office. I said, I'm looking at maybe doing a satellite office, etc. And just in that relationship, Kevin, so I think in a nutshell, the deal happened with being around, similar type people, meaning, in this case, real estate, and getting deals done. Because it was just my relationship and proximity around this guy that they found the building. And because I was going to use it as a satellite office for my company, and they were using it as their office, we did a whole owner user program, which, if you're not familiar with, basically means you just get some special financing. And it was my relationship with him that formed the partnership. So he and I and one other guy are general partners on this office building. It's structured as we're the general partners. We collect a small asset management fee on it. Moss and Company does the management on it, and we have other investors, minority investors, I would put it. So we keep the books and distribute the cash accordingly. So not only are we general partners, but we have skin in the game as investors as well. But I think the main takeaway, and if you have any follow-up questions, Kevin, about that, if you have any more details you want to explain, but I think the key, guys, is back to the psychology and making that deal happening the way it did. And it all started with just writing it on a piece of paper as part of my goals. Is you become the average of your 5 closest peers, right? So when they say pick your friends wisely, that can't be more true. I'll just leave it at that, right? If you're in a group like this guy, President of Lee and Associates, that led to that deal. So the saying is proximity is power. Find successful people that you want to mimic, because as Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to invent the wheel, right? You just need to know somebody that knows it and say, hey, I'd love to do that with you, right? And next thing you know, you got a whole bunch of deals happening. So proximity is power. Be around the right people, because you become the average of your 5 closest friends, and the average of all aspects of life: happiness, wealth, and wealth isn't just money, right? But finance, money being part of that as well. Kevin, does that answer your question of the structure of how that's set up? It's an LLC, specifically, that owns the property. And with the owner user situation, it's a great deal because you only have to put in 10% of money down. We did higher because we did some renovations, but it gives you gives you some great benefits in buying real estate.
Yes, that does answer my questions. Thank you a lot for your insight. You kind of given me like a new idea to kind of like start hashing out more, and so one day I would like to be a real estate investor. So I think being a property manager and also buying a building, leasing it out to myself, pay myself, would be something to think about in the future. So thank you for all that information, Chris. I appreciate it.
No, you got it, Kevin. That's music to my ears. And I agree, even if for everyone here and on Zoom, even if property management doesn't sound fun to you, it's different, there are definitely fun aspects, but there's also not so fun aspects, right? Being on call 24/7, emergency maintenance at night, etc. A lot of people don't want to do it, but that leaves good opportunity for people that do want to do it. But I think my point of that is, Kevin, as you mentioned, you like to learn about the operations, and the best investor is going to have knowledge on how to operate, right? So even if you don't want to do it, and that's why I said it's music to my ears, Kevin, the fact that you gain the knowledge of operation, you have that background, the effects of NOI, the services, the importance of how whatever that investment is compared to how it compares to the competition. just knowing the operation side, you'll be able to make better decisions on what properties do you like, what properties do you invest in? And more importantly, once you are an investor, if you're not seeing the types of returns you are expecting, you could look at the financials of the property because the financials tell the story. You could dissect it to say, oh, I see what the problem is. It's a vacancy issue. It's a personnel issue, right? It goes back to the 6 Ps that we just talked about. And those are the tools that will help you become a better investor in selecting properties. So I appreciate you saying that. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
What are some of those goals you have on the back of your closet?
Oh, great question. All right, so the question is, what are some of the goals on the back of my closet? It's on a 4x4 card. Some are, to be honest, are like net worth shit, like, okay, I want, by this time, I want to be worth this amount. And it sounds shallow, but the reason I want to do that is because the more you make, the more you have, the more you can give, right? I write checks to LMU. I love giving. I write checks to where I coach, the high school up in Ventura County, Oaks Christian. I support the LMU baseball program. By the way, any baseball players? Yeah, maybe online. Last time there were no LMU ball players here at the class. But anyway, the more you get, or the more you have, the more you can get. Like one of my goals on that card actually is to write a $100,000 check to the high school. That's one. Another one that was just recently added because it's a living document, right? So remember Super Dad identity to my kids? Well, my 12-year-old, even though I work out, what I suck at are pull-ups. I suck at pull-ups. And so I said, so one of the goals is 20 pull-ups by the time I turn 44, which is end of February. And my kid bet me $100. So that's one of my goals. And I got a lot of work ahead of me to do that. Let's see. So there are financial, there's a buying a vacation home. And that's a 2 or 3 year goal on that card. Celebrating life and rewarding yourself with a Tesla truck. That's a 2023 goal. Those are the main ones, but you get the idea. That's a good question. But yeah, by the way, you got to celebrate. You got to celebrate life and the present and the victories, the little things, because you never know how much goddamn time you have, right? So that's another thing. Don't forget to celebrate. It's not always I will win, right? Don't do I will win. Celebrate what you have now, because the mind is a powerful thing. We talked about the triad, how to control your state, and it's amazing. You don't have to win the lottery to be ecstatic. You can tell your brain you just won the lottery and act like you won the lottery, and your emotions you'll have the same effect, right? So why not celebrate life and make sure you're in the right mental state? Everything will just be better at the end of the day. Good question on the goals. I think I got most of them. I probably have a few more that I need to keep looking at. What else? Yes.
I already know this, but one thing I think that a lot of us would probably benefit from, can you tell us a little bit about like the REAC inspections in HUD when it comes to Section 8 and Section 42 housing and how that affects your cash flows and your incomes?
Oh, interesting. All right, so now we're getting into some more detail. HUD and Section 8 housing. Basically, it's a affordable component. It's another type of investment that's certainly more popular in the day and age of expensive housing, especially in Southern California. So it's basically subsidized housing, and what Chris is referring to are HUD inspections, and basically that's the city or the governance coming in, doing an inspection, unit by unit inspection of the property, and basically not only grading you on your operation, but also coming up with a list of what you need to get done. Same thing happens even outside of HUD in LA. They come every 3 years, they inspect your property and give you a list of things that you need to get done. The reason it's important is compliance, right? There are penalties if you're not compliant. There's some liabilities that can be associated with that. But I think more importantly, to Chris's point, Anytime you get an outside governing body, whatever that may be, that has the power to tell you what you need to do to your property, basically means you better have some operating dollars for it, because it can affect cash flow. It can affect operation. Now, if you're on top of things like a good operator and spending the money and not deferring maintenance, et cetera, those inspections are not a big deal. But if you're not on top of things, those inspections can create quite the expense, which could hurt cash flow to investors, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or even annually, depending on that inspection. Good question. Thank you. Anything else? You guys want to hear some stats on the eviction ordinance? Right, for the pandemic? I'll give you some stats and then we'll wrap it up. Out of 14,000 units in LA, and by the way, we bleed into Ventura County, we bleed into Inland Empire, and we bleed into Orange County. But 90% of it is in city of LA. Just for stat purposes, I wanted to announce them. So when March 2020 hit with the pandemic and the city of LA said, you do not have to pay rent if you've been affected by COVID. I immediately, talk about an effect of your business. What they don't realize, property managers, we make our money is a percentage of what we collect, right, for the buildings. So I went into panic mode thinking, so I stayed up all night doing calculations thinking, how much rent do we need to collect out of 14,000 units just to keep the lights on in the business and keep everyone's paycheck in? Because if everyone stopped, there went our business, there went our employees, right? Fortunately, more people than not paid. But at the time, there was some stressful moments thinking, what the hell is the government doing coming in and affecting my business, right? In this sense. And more importantly than my business, the 400 employees that rely on this business that are Angelinos, right, that need these paychecks. So that was the initial reaction. Fortunately, it never got that bad. But California came up with a resident relief plan. So anyone that did not pay, you could, as a landlord, you could apply to the state, and then the resident would have to comply, and then the state would pay that rent that was due, right? So to give you an idea, at the worst time during the pandemic, we had as high as 16% of the residents not paying, 16%. That meant through March of 2022, when the state program ended, the California Rent Relief Program ended, we had $17 million of rent that was not paid. We collected 15 million from the state. So good or bad, taxpayers, right? The state paid for it. However you want to look at it, that's up to you. But so the state program helped. But once the state program ended at the end of March, the state moratorium ended as well. Makes sense, right? We no longer have the funds to pay for your rent. Now everyone has to pay rent, right? We went 2 years or whatever it was. Well, the city of LA decided, the city council decided, they're not going to end their eviction moratorium with the state back in March. They're going to continue it. They recently voted to end it the end of January of next year, 2023. So from March of earlier this year to January of 2023, you still have people not paying. 2 million, roughly 2 million in the city of LA specifically, per month going unpaid. And the city has no plan to make landlords whole. They don't have a relief program. So LA, in my mind, bad policy. You don't have to pay, and they don't have a way to pay landlords. So basically what that means is we've accumulated back up to 17 million unpaid rent in the city of LA alone. Their plan, the city of LA says, landlords, you'll get paid because at the end of the moratorium, which is end of January, residents will have 1 year from there to pay all back rent. Will it happen? Who knows? Most will say no. I will say There might be a small percentage that does, most will not. But that just gives you a little bit of an idea how the governing body, right? With the rent freeze we talked about earlier, or in this case, it could really affect your business. So, my whole strategy when Chris asked about rent control, I go, oh, it's 3% every year, automatic. Nope. Then a pandemic hits, right? Who saw that coming? So those are just some external influences on real estate or investment in general that can be pretty scary at times. But those are just some stats. So now you understand how the city's decisions affect different industries. I'm sure it'll all work out, but it could be certainly painful, right? If you have 8 units, like that the one deal I keep referring to, I had one resident not pay. He didn't. In fact, he's still not paying. He's getting locked out. I had to finally evict him. And he owed, I don't know, 22 months times 20. He owed probably $60,000, 30 of which I got from the state, and 30 of which will probably go unpaid. So it really sucks for small buildings, right? A lot of mom and pop owners, really struggle because the expenses are still there, their mortgages are still there, but the income's stopped. So anyway, that gives you a little background on some of the local ordinances and how it's affected the industry. Anything else? Nothing else on chat? What time we got?
Hey Chris, I just have one last question about the commercial deal that you did. Yeah. So you said that you did owner user financing with 10% down. Is there anything like that, that you know of for multifamily commercial buildings? Because I'd like to look into it if that's something.
So owner user for multifamily, is that your question?
Yeah, for
With
commercial.
Financing. The answer is, I don't think so, Kevin. There are some speakers on this certificate program that, really come from the finance world, that they would probably better answer it. To my knowledge, it doesn't exist, unfortunately, because you're right. If you could get in your first building with 10% down, it certainly makes it a hell of a lot easier, right? And that's what's so great about the owner user world. On the office side of things, or even on the industrial side of things. But to my knowledge, it does not exist on the apartment side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but great question. I like where your head's at. Yes.
Is it okay if I take over screen sharing so I can give everybody the QR codes?
Oh, yeah. QR codes. How do you do it?
I have it ready. Just
please do. Go for it.
Share this.
Everyone has my contact info, and then the QR code is going to come up.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone on Zoom. Thank you guys for being here live. Really appreciate your time. And now go and execute. Right? That's the theme of the day. Go get some massive action in play. This weekend. Don't wait. Thank you, everyone.